Hello and welcome to Stripe Dialogues. Today we have with us Mr. Bipindra NC. He is a well-known, renowned defense and aerospecialist journalist, management professional, law practitioner, uh, think tanker, social media representative, and also he's been a founder of the CEO editor of Arming India. He's also the current editor of Eurasian Time. His alma mater is Nalsar University, so you can understand. So he has a very multifarious personality with everything thrown into him: a journalist, a social media expert, law practitioner, and also an editor of Eurasian Times. He has been editor in the past. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, General Dushyant Singh. It's a pleasure being on Strive stream. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
So before we go ahead with today's discussion, I was thinking of giving a brief overview as to why we are doing this discussion. 2+2 Meet has been a format which is kind of a unique format which India started off with Japan, and then it has enrolled many other countries into it, including the US. And this was the fifth meet between India and the US. And also, there are two ministers from either side in this particular thing: the external affairs minister from India, and you have the secretary of state from the US or any other country equivalent. And then you have the defense minister from either side, and from the other side, it is secretary of defense. So we had Austin Lloyd and Blinken from America, and we had S. Jayashankar and Mr. Rajnath Singh from the Indian side. The meeting per se had set forth to basically take a progress of what all has happened, what all has been agreed to in the previous four meetings, what has been the ground situation, and then take steps to corrective steps or further steps to enhance the partnership between the two countries. Thereafter, it also took a view on the shared priorities of augmenting cooperation in the multilateral forums. I'm referring to Quad and I2U2.
Yeah.
Basically, Indo-Pacific was the major issue on which this thing was set forth, and they were also supposed to hold individually the defense delegations of the two sides, and the foreign delegations of the two sides were also supposed to meet individually. Two things: I did a program before the meeting started, and I had said that there are two three peculiar things this time. Firstly, is the timing of the meeting. The timing of the meeting was such that a lot of geopolitical events are taking place, and India is in the eye of the storm of number of them. For example, the Indo-Canadian spat and the Five Eyes controversy linked to that. Uh, Western and the deep state sponsored anti-Bharat campaign, which is going on. You can see it, breaking out on and off, and both the sides. I mean, the Indian media also and the external media tries to unsettle the country. Then you have the Gaza conflict, you have the Russia-Ukraine war, which continues to drag on. One doesn't know for how long it is going to take. Then you also had the Pak support. Suddenly the US started supporting Pakistan. It got it removed from the FATF. The loans were released, and the US ambassador visited the Gilgit Baltistan area. So and then interference into Bangladesh, that is something which is elections of Bangladesh. It looks like there's going to be a regime change initiated by the US. So uh, timings and the events which are there, one was really apprehensive as to what is going to be the outcome of this 2+2 meeting. So exactly for this purpose, we have Mr. Bipindra to discuss as to the outcome, and how has China actually viewed this entire thing. Because what we got immediately once the meeting got over is this kind of a statement coming out from China, right? Will
Yeah.
end in disaster. China fumes as India US ties heat up after the 2+2 dialogue. So with that, sir, the floor is all yours. And in between, of course, we will keep discussing uh, any questions which come across, and then in the end, we'll have We'll have the live audience asking questions, which will be in the form of a chat box, and I'll
Right.
take up those. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. You're absolutely right. The timing of this 2+2 meeting is very important, and it also has a lot of ramifications, if you may, on the entire geopolitics itself. Like, for
Yes,
example, there was something which surprised me because even in the press conference that the foreign minister and the defense minister of India hosted post this 2+2 event, there was no question on the Ukraine-Russia war at all, or on India's stand that is kind of balancing the entire issue of
abs-
Ukraine-Russia war. Uh,
absolutely
there was no question at all on that, and that actually surprised me because it was a very important geopolitical development over the last 2 years. It's almost going to be 2 years since the war broke out, and nobody wanted to talk about it in the press conference, or including in the joint statement that was released post to this
correct.
2+2 meeting. So essentially, how I see it is that probably it was a deliberate attempt, or maybe it was a inadvertent overlooking of the issue by both the media and the two officers, the Indian officials who were addressing the media at that point in time. uh, I suspect it is by design. It is essentially, I believe,
Absolutely,
it must be
absolutely.
overlooking because
I mean,
there was a limited time for the press conference
discussion.
itself. So probably
Yes,
this issue did not come up in the questions, and essentially the two officials, the foreign secretary and the defense secretary of India, didn't want to address it unless there is a question on this issue. So
yeah.
that
I
is
mean,
just
yeah, I agree with you because you cannot expect a professional external affairs minister like Mr. S. Jaishankar, who has been a foreign affairs guy for the entire career and then continues as a
correct.
minister, to
Correct.
skip such a very important issue.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I mean, he's a practitioner, so he knows what to speak and when to speak and how to
Yeah, so
speak.
it is.
So
Yeah, so it is a deliberate effort, I suppose.
and also he has the gift of gab, so he knows
Ah,
to put
correct.
it in such a diplomatic and a subtle manner.
Correct.
Essentially, yeah, I think it was overlooked by everybody, so nobody essentially talked about it. But I am certain that the EU 2+2 meeting would have discussed the Ukraine war. Uh,
Informally, we discussed.
yeah, or maybe even in the official format, they would have discussed this issue because obviously US is sort of concerned over the India's stand, which is somewhat in
Correct.
India's national interest, and maybe the democratic world looks at it differently. But that apart, I think the India stand is worthy of praise because Russia has been a long-standing strategic partner of India, even at times when Indian-US relationship was in abyss.
Yeah.
So essentially, yeah, I think it is a praiseworthy stand. Despite that, US does have concerns. But what I feel is that this issue of Russia's war on Ukraine is not going to come in the way of US India building their relationship, which they have been doing since the Vajpayee era.
Yeah.
Slowly, progressively, they have been increasing. I think almost 25 years since the revival of the India-US ties have happened. And over the last 25 years, if you see, there has been a vast improvement in the manner, in the language that the two sides speak with each other and about each other in both international fora and in
Yeah.
bilateral meeting settings. So it is a very interesting meet that happened. And interestingly, this time, the Indian defense minister did not mince words at all when he talked
Hmm.
about China's aggression in the
Correct.
Indo-Pacific region and it being the biggest threat
Correct.
for the global democratic world.
Correct.
They also talked about the trust and the global order and the rules based order and all that terms which don't
Correct.
directly talk about China, but essentially it meant China. But interestingly, this time he directly mentioned about Chinese aggression, which is again a very important uh,
Ah,
you know
that's
outcome
it.
of this meeting. And
Yeah.
obviously, it is expected that China would react in the manner it would react. What you exactly showed right now, where
Yeah.
they have said that this India-US ties will end in a disaster, or this
This is on
effort.
the global times. Their mouthpiece.
Yes,
Uh,
in Global Times was the one which vociferously,
correct.
does propaganda against India frequently. Even during the G20 summit, if you see,
Yeah,
Global
it
Times
has
has been, putting out a lot of articles thrashing India,
been.
criticizing India, and also essentially, stating that India doesn't have the capability to become a leader of the
Correct.
of the democratic world that it is
Or
venturing
global
into.
south for that matter.
Correct, or the global south for that matter. And they also questioned the theme of the G20, Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam theme. The
Correct.
world is one family theme, saying that this is, I mean, absurd reasoning was given for
Yeah.
that objection, saying that it's not part of the Sanskrit is not part of the UN approved languages.
I mean, for the sake of argument, they were giving arguments of
Absolutely, they
fully,
Global
fully
Times.
correct, fully realizing that G20 was a tremendous success. In fact, in this 2+2 meet, the American side has praised India for the fantastic
For
way,
the
the
success
way.
of the G20 leadership presidency of India. And of course, the
Correct,
entire world, the entire
correct,
G20, which is now almost touching 100 nations, almost
correct.
everybody. And it was a master stroke in the sense that you got the African Union as a member of G20
The
at the
entire
initiative
African.
of India. Exactly. They
Correct,
again global south
correct,
representation there. So
correct.
it's been a master stroke as far as the presidency of G20 of India is concerned. And also, what I really liked about the G20 presidency of India this time is that unlike any other time, there was
Hmm.
this huge effort by the Indian government to reach out to the people. I
Okay.
don't think the common man would have ever heard about G20 on a regular basis until say 2023, when
Hmm.
India took over presidency, and it became a people's movement sort of a thing. Jan
Okay.
Bhagidari, Jan Bhagidari, people's participation,
Yeah, yeah. That
which is an initiative of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself, which
correct,
is the turning point, I believe, in G20. Probably he has set high benchmarks. It is going to be
yes,
very difficult for the future presidencies of G20 to match it. I think that
correct,
way it's a major achievement for India in terms of G20 itself. So just to cover up that. So let's talk
correct.
about the Chinese reaction to this 2+2 thing.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah,
you look at the language that has been
yeah.
used, first thing
Correct,
is they are blaming the US
correct,
for trying to bring India into its circle of influence, and
correct,
also trying to bring it into its own vortex of allies.
correct,
That is one of the themes that is running in the Global Times article. They are
correct,
not blaming India for it; they are blaming US for this, and also stating that it will be a huge problem for India if it falls for the tactics of the US. So this is one interesting language that we see in the Global Times. The second one is they are now also talking about India as an equal. Till recently, even during this G20 thing, they did not
yes,
look at India as an equal. Now, surprisingly, they are talking of India as an equal, and that must be a peaceful resolution of all our differences. India
correct,
and China should mend their relationship and all that. So, if
yes,
China really wanted it, then I believe the 2020 Ladakh aggression would not have happened.
correct,
They wouldn't continue to claim Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh as their own, and they will make a lot of amends in terms of their influence operations within India. They will stop those influence operations, and they will not
correct,
be funding publications like the Hindu or the Newsclick or thing to do propaganda against India,
correct.
or
And
they
not issuing maps like including Arunachal Pradesh as part
exactly
of.
exactly
No,
cartographic lawfare they wouldn't
correct,
indulge in.
correct,
You know, where they show parts of Indian territory as their own. Not just
Hmm.
India. This time it's been a disaster for them, where they even claimed territories which were on settled borders
Correct.
with other countries, including Russia.
Yes,
In the today's geopolitics, if you see, Russia is probably the closest ally that China can claim to
absolutely.
build,
Yeah, after
and they were.
Pakistan, North Korea, after Pakistan and North Korea, you can say that Russia is the closest
I agree with
there.
you, but Pakistan and North Korea are insignificant in
They are
terms of their capabilities and their size.
correct.
Even in the strategic, advantage that they provide to China. It is essentially Russia which provides the heft to China in its geopolitics. So that is where
Correct.
I say, and they were provoking and pricking the Russians on the border front also by this choreographic warfare.
Yeah, I
I think
know.
it borders on stupidity actually. So, but
Yes, yes, yes.
essentially, that is what
The
they have done with this cartographic warfare. So,
correct.
so yeah. So we were talking about the Chinese language in this article in Global
That's a
Times.
significant change.
Yeah, that's been a significant change. I'm actually trying to analyze why this change has happened. I'm yet to kind of put my finger on a particular aspect why this change has happened. What is China looking at, which is a disadvantage to it? Because this US-India relationship, growing relationship, is not a new thing. It's been happening for a while. The Quad has been formed in the Indo-Pacific, and the Quad, though Quad essentially states that it is not a military alliance against anybody in particular, it is quite obvious that the Quad is a instrument that these four democratic nations wants to use: US, Australia, Japan, and India wants to use against to contain China. It's a open secret. Let us agree on that point. But what is interesting about Quad is that now you see the maritime exercises, military exercises are happening under the the previously India US maritime exercises that were happening.
Malabar exercises.
Malabar exercises were happening
Malabar exercises have been extended to all the four
all the
countries.
four Quad countries. So it is an interesting development, and I think three iterations have happened already as far as Malabar as a
The,
multilateral exercise is concerned.
the
So
recent one they held it off the
in
coast of
Japan,
Australia. Of the
of the
coast of
coast,
Australia.
yeah,
That
yeah,
that
okay,
is the latest one. But surprisingly, I would like to just inform you there has been a slight change in the Australian stance because immediately after this exercise, China, Australia, and New Zealand did a maritime exercise, which was quite surprising to me as to why Australia is because there has been a change in the government in Australia, and
yes,
the second guy who's there, he's a Mandarin speaking chap.
right.
So maybe I think Kevin Rudd. So maybe that is the reason why there is a little bit of quad uncertainty. But I believe what I've been told is that ultimately Australia will fall in line.
I think they will fall in line. I also agree with you on that point for the simple reason that if you look at what China has been trying to do around
Yeah,
Australian continent, they've been trying to establish their
cases.
influence on smaller island nations, Pacific island nations, and Solomon
Absolutely.
Island. All these islands have already fallen in line with
Yeah,
China as a diktats. So
correct.
it is being seen as a major threat to Australia itself. So, moreover,
Hmm.
I mean, despite this regime change that has happened, and the previous regime was totally against China, and there is a
Correct.
reason for it. The reason for it was is that they kind of came out openly against the Chinese influence operations within
Hmm.
Australia, where they even trapped some Australian politicians uh,
Hmm.
to be I mean, they trapped them by various weaknesses that they had, and they started doing propaganda work or towing the line of China again and again. So the previous regime came out openly on that front. And the second reason is that obviously what I mentioned earlier, the Pacific Island threats that China poses to Australia. So these two, the previous regime had taken cognizance of, and a serious cognizance of, and they were totally against the Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific region. But here, we should also look at, I mean, I'm yet to analyze this aspect, but I believe Australia regime change was also a Chinese influence operation. So similarly, the Chinese are trying regime change even in India. They want a pro-China party to rule India. So there is a similarity. Even in Canada, for that matter, if Justin Trudeau has been ruling for quite a while now, but
Mm-hmm.
the 2021 elections, the 2019 elections that were held in Canada, there are reports which has been issued by the Canadian, it is equivalent to the Intelligence Bureau of India,
Mm-hmm.
CSIS. That organization has come out with a report saying that 2021 and 2019 elections were rigged at the behest of China in favor of the Liberal Party of Justin Trudeau. So
Okay.
this is a habit of China, everywhere. So it's not just in Australia or in India that they're trying it. They're trying it everywhere.
Yeah.
Essentially the three warfare strategy that they've adopted to,
I
uh,
mean,
you
you
know,
could take Maldives as an example. They've recently done this thing in Maldives also. Uh,
yes, in Maldives also exactly.
government change has taken place. Nepal, they have tried to interfere. So Bhutan, they are trying to do some kind of a interference. So I think the Chinese are up to their dirty tricks
But it's
around.
everywhere, everywhere.
Yes,
It's world
yes,
over. They're trying to do this,
correct,
and I believe this strategy of China is going to work against them ultimately because democratic values, even Australia, where a pro-China regime exists right now, or in Canada, the democratic values are so much that the people, the voters of all these democratic nations are not going to allow this kind of Chinese interference in their internal politics.
correct.
So, and of course, the voters are today much, much more knowledgeable and learned. They watch everything, they understand everything, and they take a call in national interest. I believe that the people's power is essentially a very, very strong power that China cannot
That's
breach ultimately
correct,
in any of these democratic nations.
correct. So, I have a linked question to the Chinese influence. I was going through again the Global Times, and I read one of their articles saying how APEC meeting turnout is a test for the US. Global Times editorial. This you are aware that in the coming week there'll be a meeting APEC meeting, Asia Pacific Economic Countries meeting uh, in San Francisco. So there on the sidelines, Xi Jinping and Biden are supposed to meet. And
Yeah,
I was reading this article, and it appears that they are again trying to browbeat the Americans to say that it will be test for the US, not for the Chinese. As the Chinese are not really concerned. You see, today if Chinese are getting hurt today economically, a lot of credit of that goes to the US, which has been trying to, initially it was saying decoupling, then it changed over to de-risking because both the countries are really affected by any kind of a sudden disengagement of economic activities because they are each other's largest trading partners. But the Chinese seem to be, adopting a very aggressive approach even while meetings and the uh, American president. So how do you explain this? Their economic condition is very bad. The real estate is totally gone. In fact, all their real estate companies have failed. None of them are able to revive, even after giving incentives like reducing interest rates, etc., etc. But their economy is going nowhere. Climate related disasters have taken place in China, yet their approach is very aggressive. Do you really connect it to Xi Jinping's personality, or the CCP is doing this thing? To me, it looks like that it is Xi Jinping's personality, but I want to have your views as to why this aggressive approach, even while they are in such a bad state.
Right, sir. I agree with you on this point that it is a Xi Jinping's style of politics that he does.
Hmm.
I, this third term that he got last year as the CCP's chief and also the president of China, it's a turning point as far as Xi Jinping's political career is concerned. So essentially, he's trying to project himself or place himself as the next big thing after Mao Zedong. So that is something there, and he want to leave an imprint of himself on the CCP and communist China for posterity. That's his agenda. That is very clear. It's come out in various formats and various forms, including the way he handled the CCP conclave where he saw one of his predecessors walk, to be walked out
Yeah,
because he was opposing. Yeah, so that kind of a signaling he has done that he is the preeminent, leader, communist leader ever to have born after Mao Zedong. So that is one thing that he has think. So this aggression of the China essentially comes from that behavior. I mean, it's like the dog and the master story. If if the master is walking the dog and somewhere he displays fear, the dog
correct.
senses it, and the dog immediately also fears, and if he shows aggression, the dog also shows aggression. It's like it's a very similar master and the dog, his master's voice kind of a scenario here. So this global times is aggressive behavior. They have been doing it for in the recent years. They have been doing it in a much more explicit and a blatant manner. So this aggression essentially comes from Xi Jinping's persona. It is his persona that is actually dictating how the CCP, functions, or all the state-owned agencies, including the media, functions, or how they, essentially conduct themselves. So this, even in diplomacy, you see this aggression that they show. The lone wolf warrior
Yes.
diplomacy that they adopt. So these are all essentially emanating from Xi Jinping's persona, his personality, and that is where I think he's a little bit foolish because of this, because the world doesn't work like that. I mean, you may be the most preeminent leader of your own communist China, but the world is not going to accept you uh, that easily. It's going to take a lot of task. It's going to take a lot of goodwill that you show before any nation, uh, you know, any leader becomes a big leader in any country. So the world recognizes only benign leaders. It doesn't recognize people who are, aggressive or
Strong.
so. Yeah, or no, not essentially. I mean, strong. You can be strong and also benign,
Yeah.
but if you're benign and you're harmful to other nations, then probably those nations are not going to accept it.
Yes.
So the
Yeah.
dead
Basically,
diplomacy is a good example of dead
the
diplomacy is a
basic,
good example of how China is not benign. So what has happened
your
with Pakistan? What has happened with Sri Lanka? Several other
your
nations.
correct. Your
Yeah,
intentions are very. Your intentions are what decides how you are going to be treated. In fact, they were suggesting in the article which I mentioned that US now can't afford even de-risking. Probably
yeah,
in the security arena, they will manage to do. They will try to do a de-risking, but it has to be half de-risking, not even full de. So from decoupling, it has come to de-risking, and from de-risking now they're saying half de-risking. I don't know what it means by half de-risking. Possibly what it means is that the critical technologies will be put
yeah.
under the ban
See,
and tariff and
yeah,
bans, and rest of the sector would be open to the Chinese today are in a dire need of economic injection into their economy. They don't have the middle class market. They don't have the I mean their external debt is also quite high. The amount which they owe, I mean, which others owe to them, that also is so large that
correct.
their returns are very poor. So
Yeah,
that is why probably against India also they are saying, because India has a very large market. Today I was reading one of the articles. It was saying over, I think, I mean, it's a article from the a Chinese daily only, which says India has a bumper sale on Diwali of some 1,000 crores or something like that. Some figures have been quoted.
Yeah,
What it means, they're watching our sales because they are getting affected.
obviously.
Last year when we had put a clamp on them, they had suffered a great loss because the Indians, I mean, they still managed to send their goods, but the loss was almost 50%. Now,
Absolutely.
I think the economy is somewhere trying to correct them in the right way to say that India, we deal with India now on equal terms. Fine, I think you have come to equal. After some time, you'll start looking at us as more
Yeah.
influential than you. I have another question related again to this thing, to the Chinese uh, impact on the 2+2 dialogue. But before that, uh, I found that the entire joint statement which I read through in detail, they have covered issues like Afghanistan, which is really, as of now, Afghanistan is not that high in the geopolitical. It is a cause of concern, but Afghanistan was put in the joint statement. But somehow on Indo-Canada relationship, there was a quiet. I mean, like you had the Russia-Ukraine relationship, there was a quiet. Do you have any through your journalistic connects? Do you have any information on the Indo-Canadian spat? Any outcome of the 2+2? I'm seeing the YouTube that people are saying that it was discussed and the Canada issue is being resolved, etc. But what's your information on that?
So, during after post the 2+2 meeting, there was not much talked about this issue, except for saying that yes, we did discuss this issue. So that was the only
Correct.
thing that came out from them. But I
Correct.
believe there has been an in-depth discussion on this subject between the
Mm-hmm.
two sides. So
Okay.
probably at this point in time, they don't want to reveal much on what they have discussed on this, because it is still quite sensitive. In fact, post the 2+2 dialogue meeting, Justin
Mm-hmm.
Trudeau has once again ranted against India in one of his.
Yeah, that is why I'm a
Yeah.
little.
So it will take a little while, but probably it is also quite possible that post Justin Trudeau's statement inside this Canadian Parliament, and
Mhm.
the muted support from all the Five Eye nations. So there has been not much progress on that front, though the customary statements are being made that India should cooperate, and it's a very mild statement from the Five Eyes nation. They're not
Mhm.
totally slamming India for anything of the credible allegations as Justin Trudeau put out. And probably India has also taken a very strong stand that
Mhm.
this is a humbug. This is not a credible information that Canada has.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
in fact, sir, I want to point out one thing here. I don't know if you
Huh.
came across this. There
Yeah.
was one Canadian, Chinese origin
Mhm.
Canadian national. His
Mhm.
name is Lao Deng. That's his name. So he's a
Okay.
YouTuber. He has put
Mhm.
out a YouTube, on his YouTube channel. He has put out a program just
Mhm.
about a 3 weeks back or 4 weeks back, where he
Okay.
says that there was a Chinese involvement in
Mhm. Yes.
Nijar killing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
he has explained what was the vehicle that was used, how many people were there, what was the clothing that they were wearing, how they
Correct.
came, and how they escaped post the Nijar killing out of Canada, how these Chinese agents escaped out of Canada without being detected. And it was essentially a uh, Chinese plan to create a wedge between India and the Five Eye nations, where the relationship is growing much at a much faster pace to
Mhm.
China's liking.
Okay.
Um, and he also says that there is a plan called as the ignition plan. So
Mhm.
basically, you ignite and trigger a row between India and these Five Eyes nations in different ways and different formats. And this was one of the techniques that they used of
Okay.
eliminating Nijar. That information sounds preposterous. I agree with you that it sounds incredible. But the point is, I think Chinese origin national talking about it, Canadian national talking about it inside Canada, and a lot of information that he's providing,
Mm-hmm.
specific
Yeah,
specific
yeah.
details, which is very interesting, and I think that needs a little bit of more investigation by maybe media organizations or some even Canadian
Intelligence.
agencies, security agencies
Intelligence.
should probe into it. And there was
Correct,
also
correct.
another report where it says that Canada, uh, all the Chinese dissidents, Chinese
Mm-hmm.
origin Canadian nationals, dissidents of Chinese who are settled in Canada, are being targeted by the Justin Trudeau government at the
Mm-hmm.
bidding of communist China, at the bidding of Beijing. And
Okay.
this is again another very important report. And this
Mm-hmm.
report comes after the CSIS's report, recent report, where they talk about China's interference in Canadian politics, and how
Mm-hmm.
Justin Trudeau was propped up by the Chinese to post his leadership of the Liberal Party. So and moreover, it also says that after the CSIS report was provided to Justin Trudeau, he has been quiet and silent on that report itself. He has not acted on the report of the CSIS of Chinese interference in Canadian politics. So they also
Okay.
the report also listed out as the Canadian politicians who have been trapped by China by different means, by different weaknesses that they had, and they are
Okay.
making them to do their bidding. So these are two very important reports
Yeah. Yeah.
that probably I look at Justin Trudeau's credible allegations statement inside the Canadian Parliament as also a Chinese doing. So
Okay.
probably he fall flat, prostrated before Xi Jinping to agree to,
You,
blame
you're
India for it.
correct. You're
Yeah,
probably right because I was in Canada last year, and at that point in time, I used to see Post TV, etc., the Canadian TV, blaring away against China on various issues. Every day they had almost an hour long program berating China, criticizing China on whole number of issues, whether they were geopolitical issues or economic issues. They were always, especially after that Hawaii arrest,
Mhm.
the relations had gone bad. All of a sudden, with this event of Niger, the whole scene out there, as I believe, changed, and it's now India which is almost on a daily basis being
Being
targeted
bashed and yeah, being targeted. Yeah.
by by the Canadian media and Canadian government. Trudeau seems to be leading the charge to do that. So that's why I was expecting a little more stronger statement out of 2+2 on that particular issue. But that's something which I think only time will tell. The You had alluded to the fact that the 2+2 totally ignored, point blank,
Yeah.
the Russia-Ukraine issue. What could have been the motivation? Was it India which drove this particular issue not to be included, or it was again a kind of oversight or
Sir,
not relevant? India,
I'm not.
India.
Yeah, I'm not very sure of whether India drove it. Probably, I believe that is a sticking point. So
Hmm.
it's a Russia-Ukraine war is a sticking point between the two nations. Probably they would wanted to send out a very positive signal as an outcome of this particular meeting, and so they definitely discussed it in their
Hmm.
internal meeting, in their closed door meetings. They have discussed it, but
Hmm.
essentially they want to keep it out because that comes as a what is spoiler for the entire positivity that the statement brings out,
Yeah.
the joint
Yeah.
statement brings out, or the outcomes of the 2+2 meeting. That is my understanding of the situation, and that is also my belief. I've not spoken to people on why this was done, or whether India was the one which put pressure on US to drop that particular thing in the joint statement or even in their conversations. But essentially, this is what I believe. This is what I understand or assess from this 2+2 ignoring the Russia-Ukraine war.
Okay.
It's quite
So
interesting, actually. This is very interesting, actually.
yeah, yeah, it is a good observation. Also, I when I read through it, I thought probably they have ignored it or they've just. But then this being highlighted by you, it got me thinking a little bit. Last question, and then we'll go on to the audience question.
Absolutely.
And the last question which I have is that in the entire 2+2 meet, one thing which stood out to me as very obvious was the thrust on defense cooperation.
Yeah.
I mean, more than 70% of the joint communique talks about defense cooperation of various issues. Although, I mean, there have been matters which have been discussed between the two. But so how do you explain this? Because if we are going to have such a strong defense cooperation, especially related to our nuclear supplier group, etc., all those things, there are a number of issues involved. Comcasa agreement is also there. So do you think that the Americans are now serious about taking India forward, or they are still keeping it as kind of a hedging strategy, keep India engaged, or they're going to be now seriously looking at India as a major partner for its uh, various security concerns, or it is just simple money making, as people say in the U.S. defense industry guides the U.S. politics, and elections are around the corner. So, what is the reason?
Sir,
Is it serious decisions
I,
or
I,
defense industry guiding the American
sir, I
geopolitics?
believe it is a very, very serious, it's the most profound aspect of India-US relationship. Let us agree on
Okay.
that. Why I say
Okay.
that is, if you, in the last 25 years, I said last 20, since Vajpayee era, this relationship has been building over the years. So, and if you look at the relationship, what has been defining this relationship is the defense ties that the two nations have started working on and progressing, very significantly in the last 25 years. And it all started with Vajpayee era, and then
Mhm.
progressed to the Manmohan Singh era. And we had this, of course, nuclear is a strategic level deal. The nuclear deal
Mhm.
happened in 2008,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then even before this nuclear deal, if you see in 2007, India bought its first American equipment, at least in the, in the present generation's memory. For the first time, they got the USS Trenton and rechristened this as INS Jaleshwa,
Mhm.
which is the which helps India to carry out, you know, across the shore operations essentially. So the amphibious operation vehicle was the first. This was the first warship that provided India the capability to do amphibious ops. So that is a major
Hello.
first step
Hello.
that happened. Since hello,
Sorry, I got cut. Sorry, I got
no,
disconnected. So we can
no, not an issue,
start
sir.
the.
I was talking about this 2007 INS Jaleshwa, that is USS Trenton, which was
Yeah.
bought by India. I think that is where
Amphibious,
you got disconnected. So
right,
what I was
amphibious.
saying was that the amphibious capability, warfare capability, was enhanced. India's
Mhm.
capability was enhanced by this particular warship that India got. So it started off from there, and since then and now, in the last 15 years, India has done a defense deal worth more than $20 billion with the US. We have got
Okay.
multiple equipment. So it's, you name about Apache gunships for the 22 for the Air Force, or the 6 for the Indian Army Aviation Corps, or you talk about the strategic lift capabilities of C-17, or the special ops aircraft C-130J, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, you name the companies, we have done deals with all of them. And the latest is the Romeo MH, the Romeo Seahawk.
Yeah.
helicopters that we got for our anti-submarine warfare capabilities. So
And there
this
are many in the pipeline also.
and there are
And
plenty in the pipeline, including the MQ-9 Reaper,
yeah,
MQ-9 Bravo Reaper that we
yeah,
are going to get,
Predator.
and we have already leased some of them for the Indian Navy, and we have used this MQ-9B Reaper in Ladakh conflict for surveillance purposes. Right now, it's a surveillance capability, and we are also
Yeah.
acquiring only for surveillance capability, but it has the potential to be weaponized at a later date. And of course, we all know that the US has used the armed, Reaper and the Predator drones most effectively against the non-state actors, taking out several of them, you know, you know, in various regions inside the Middle East, Pakistan, and everywhere. So they have used it most effectively, and there are reports of the this predator drones not being very effective in a conventional warfare, and that they are only useful in taking on non-state actors and issues like that. But despite that, the surveillance capability that it provides, an unmanned surveillance capability that it provides, aerial surveillance capability that it provides, is it's enormous. So that way, I think India is, in a very planned manner with a lot of thought into it, decided to buy this. So, what I mean to say is that the defense relationship has been the most defining relationship. Not only in procurements, we are now going to be doing joint production of the F414, General Electric engines in India. The HAL is tying up with GE for this, and then we are going to do the Striker, armored personal carriers that we are going to be doing, and there are plenty that are in the works. And also, I want to mention about a very critical project. It hasn't given us fruitful results as of now, but it could turn out to be a major thing if I mean, it is a Democrats government that is in US right now, and it was initiated during the Democrat regime in 2013 when they announced this Defense Technology and Trade Initiative (DTTI), which is a very unique concept which came about during Defense Secretary Dr. Ashton Carter's tenure as Defense Secretary. God bless his soul. He's no more, unfortunately. He was the biggest friend of India there,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so this kind of a relationship is defined by the defense capabilities that US provides India, and also about the security needs that they foresee in the future. Of course, Malabar exercise we have already discussed it previously. So these are all kind of indicating that security is the most primary driver for the Indo-US relationship, and that is where, and they have a common enemy in China, and they have a common interest in protecting the rules-based global order. And of course, India's strategic interest and strategic reach are both expanding. So we have now economic interest in the South China Sea. The Videsh ONGC is doing some oil exploration in the Vietnamese waters and all that. So our
Yes.
strategic interest is slowly expanding beyond this Indian Ocean region, which we have always talked about as our backyard, as
Mhm.
we as the net security provider of the Indian Ocean region. But it is now expanding to the Indo-Pacific region.
Correct.
So, so that way, I think security is the most important driver of this. That is the bottom line.
Thank you very much. In fact, we had a very comprehensive discussion. We touched on diplomacy, we touched on security, we touched on defense cooperation, we touched on issues related to China and how
There
China
was
is
one
viewing.
one thing I want to mention about this defense relationship, which I called as the most defining one. In
Okay.
2016, the US
Uh-huh.
government has already declared India as a major defense partner. They have not called us an ally. We are not yet an ally of, and maybe
Yeah.
we will never become an ally.
We will
But
never be an ally.
we will never be an ally. But they have declared us as the major defense partner. In 2016 itself, they have done it, and they have been reiterating it in the National
Correct.
Defense Authorization Act.
Correct.
Since 2016, repeatedly they have been emphasizing on it. So
Yeah, actually,
we
we
have
not
already been, yeah, we have already been exalted to the status of an ally without
ally.
calling ourselves as an ally. So we will never become an ally,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
we are almost there. So
yeah.
it's that kind of a
And,
scenario.
and I think both the countries want it that way. At least India wants it that way. That we should have the benefits of a cooperation, but not raise this level to being an ally, because then we lose our freedom of going to the other blocks for
Yeah,
our
I mean,
specific
we don't want to put our eggs in one basket. We want to spread it
basket.
across. Of course, Russia is very important for India. They have been
Correct.
a steadfast Indian ally for a very long time.
That's
Maybe
why.
ally is not the term. They have been a
That,
partner, strategic
yeah, I mean,
partner, steadfast
yeah,
strategic partner for a very long time.
correct.
And we will not abandon Russia, and we should never abandon Russia on any
Correct.
front. If possible, we should wean away Russia away from
China.
China, and
Yeah.
you know
Put a
we
wedge
should
between
try,
them.
yeah, we should try to keep them on our side always, and probably
Yeah,
that is where we are trying to take this balance. And the
correct.
2+2 statement does not talk about the Russia Ukraine war. Probably that is also one of the reasons we want to keep we don't want to become an irritant for Russia in any manner, because they have saved us, they have protected us in the UNSC several times when all other nations had ganged up against her. They used their veto to stop
Correct.
anything that was being spoken against us. So we should not be a thankless nation. We should always remember our friends
Yeah.
who have stood by us.
Thank you, Mr. Bipindra. I think it was a very comprehensive discussion. And for the viewers, please like and uh, subscribe to our channel. We are trying to give you some of the best discussions on geopolitical issues. We will now move on to our questions of the audience, and we'll start off with the first one. Uh, okay. Partha P says, how do both of you see USA's invitation to India to station its own officers in Joint Military Command in Bahrain?
Yeah, I
So,
think see, this CMF is a 38 nation forum. It's, of
correct,
course, it's a military forum, obviously. So there is a major advantage for India being part of it. So primarily, there are two, three things that come to my mind immediately. One is the importance of West Asia itself. So in G20, we announced this India, Middle East, Europe corridor. So this Israel Hamas conflict has sort of put a spoke in that wheel. But despite that, this initiative is a very important initiative for India, and for that reason, India's presence in Bahrain in the CMF as part of the CMF is also very important, because we are already doing a lot of security patrols in the
correct.
Gulf of Aden, anti-piracy patrols. But there are not just non-state actors which are threatening peace and peaceful shipping via the Gulf of Aden and that region, the Middle East region. There are all other state actors also which are threatening it. I mean, I don't want to name, but there are larger security threats even from state actors and
Yeah,
both non-state actors, and that is where I think we need to be there in that forum. That is one. Number two, this also provides India with some of the best practices in multilateral military alliances and forums. So that enables us to understand and learn from others' best practices. One. So that is, and India also has got a lot of military capabilities that it can, and procedures, training procedures, operation tactics and strategy. All that it can also share. It also has some of the best practices. Probably India is the best mountain warfare and jungle warfare force in the world. So we have a lot of experience doing that. So we have something to share with them, and so there are a lot of plenty of benefits for India to be in that CMS.
I agree with you. It's a good situation for India. And
It's a
remember,
win-win
Bahrain,
situation.
Bahrain is just above Qatar, and it kind of looks at Qatar, overlooks Qatar, and we are having of late a little strained relations with Qatar. We should go in for this kind of a thing, and like Mr. Pipindra has already highlighted, we'll move to the next question, which is by DJ वाले बाबू, अमेरिका की आर्मी में यूएस सोकॉम के अंदर यूएस USA SOC, US Army Special Operations Command के अंदर, फर्स्ट SFC स्पेशल फोर्सेस कमांड के अंदर मीसो मिलिट्री इंफॉर्मेशन सपोर्ट ऑपरेशन आती है। इसकी ही टैक्टिक्स हमास भी यूज कर रहा है, सेकंड कंटिन्यूएशन कर रहा है, और हमास ने जो भी हैवानियत की थी वो ढंग गई है, और साई ऑप्स में हमेशा इसराइल को बुरी तरह से हरा रहा है, जिसका लॉन्ग टर्म इफेक्ट ये होगा कि जमीन पर भले ही इसराइल जीते, लेकिन हमास अब रीजनल नहीं, ग्लोबल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बन जाएगा, जिसके करोड़ों फॉलोअर्स और उसके आईज एंड ईयर्स बनेंगे। Right. So it's a long question which he had fielded. Essentially, he's trying to say is that ki Hamas was the creation, first of all, of Israel, and then it has learned from the uh, US tactics, etc., and applied the same thing onto Israel. And it says, I mean, he says that the although Israel may win the war, but it will not win the battle, but will not win the war. And the reason for that he's giving is that the information war is clearly being won by Hamas. Uh, if you allow me, I can answer this question
Sure.
because I've done a little study on the Hamas Israel information war as part of my book, Grey Zone Warfare: Way Ahead for India. There's a full section on this particular issue. The Hamas has always won the information war. If Israel has been weak in anything in its security apparatus, that has been information war. Somehow Israel lost the information war in 2006, 2008, the Intifada time, and subsequently also all the clashes 2021 also, and now in this war also, because Hamas has got cells operating from UK, from Qatar. Al Jazeera is its now Al Jazeera has become its mouthpiece. You go to the Al Jazeera site, it is the way it is propagating pro Hamas matters, that they are far ahead of the Israelis in information warfare. Israelis, what they did was they have given everything to the task of information war to IDF. Now, IDF is a military organization. It's really not competent enough to really fight the information war, because it is fighting the enemy on ground. So, to that extent, I agree. Information war is something which the Israel defense forces and Israel as a nation has to take care of.
And also, sir, I
Uh,
just wanted to add to what your point.
yeah,
There is this entire comb which
Mhm.
amplifies this, and
Correct,
there is a leftist ecosystem which sides with uh,
correct,
Hamas against
correct,
Israel. So,
correct,
I mean, Israel is a very small nation, and the population is a minority population in the global,
correct,
population index, and that way, you can't beat Hamas in information warfare because it's being amplified by all other
correct.
other.
Hamas is doing an integrated operations in the sense
Absolutely,
it is deliberately exposing its children and women to fire, and once they lose life, they have created command posts below hospitals. I mean, that's something which is very very unethical on their part. They should actually save them rather than expose them to danger.
they are essentially
So
using these tactics to show Israel as the
yeah,
person
yeah.
who's doing the bad things.
Correct. Correct. So I agree with you, DJ, that information war is going to be something very tough, not to be cracked by Israel. But let's wait for some more time, because there could be an agreement. See, for Israel, it has become. I've been telling in my program that notion of victory for Israel has become very difficult. What is the notion of victory for Israel? When will they call that this war they have won? They lost the 2006 2008 war with Lebanon, essentially because of this. Because the prime minister had said, we went inside, we destroyed so many people, killed so many people, destroyed so much of infrastructure, but in the end, what did we get? Nothing. For two prisoners, they had to give 1,000 plus prisoners back to Hezbollah. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that the notion of victory for Israel has become very difficult. And if by chance, if they lose all the hostages, I think it will be very difficult for Israel to come uh, out of it with a victorious
They
front.
won't be able to claim a victory after that.
Yeah, I mean, it will be a. I think they've done a masterstroke, Hamas guys. Although, let me tell you, they should be blamed for every loss of life which is taking place in Palestine today. It is because of their stupidity. I would say that they are exposing their women, children, old people to such disaster. We'll move to the next question, and this is actually we are already overshooting our time, so we will now be taking sort of quick answers. Question is there any relation between 2+2 meeting and FATF review of Bharat happening simultaneously? You can answer this if you want. I raise.
No, I don't think so, sir. Short
No.
answer.
Okay, so I had a position on it, so I had told our viewers that FATF is part of a game which is possibly linked to the the entire internal situation what is happening in India related to elections, etc. uh, you know it is the woke media which is trying to see why they have come here is they are saying that the government of India does not follow uniform procedure in allowing various NGOs from foreign funding. So they have quoted few examples like Center for Policy Research uh, has been denied foreign funding, right? And similarly, out of the 33,000, about 22,000 NGOs have been denied funding. We have our reasons for denying these fundings. If they find any kind of a loophole, if the FATF finds any kind of a loophole in our system, I'm sure we are in to see another round of woke media and leftist trying to rake up this issue to keep the Indian internal situation on the boil. Obviously, the elections are around the corner, so I think we'll go
Yeah,
ahead from there. Yeah.
but there
Anything
is
you
no
want to add?
link between the two meetings.
Yeah. Yeah. So, next question is from Rakesh Bhatia. The joint statements seem to be full of grand statements, but without much to substantiate the same. Example, working together on global issues, but no mention of Canada, Ukraine, and Arab Israel. So, I think,
Yeah, I think we addressed this question already.
yeah, we've already addressed this question, Bhatia. We have to see things coming on ground. Of course, these statements are first of all very brief. They can't contain everything.
Everything.
They are basically read out at the media briefings. We'll have to see and wait as to what is the detailed report which comes out after a while. It'll take, I think, a month or so before they can actually put out something on 2+2. But suffice it to say that they are maintaining these stance is itself a kind of a continuity of otherwise they could have omitted it also. What I liked the best was that the two words cooperation and co-production and co-development. Cooperation in co-production and co-development, two are very major words. Co-production means existing equipment would be co-produced, and co-development means new equipment may come under this ambit of our 2+2 meet defense cooperation, which is something which we should wait for. Let's see if the G414 becomes a co-production. That will be the day when we will say, okay, we are reaching somewhere ahead. We have the next question. Okay, there is one question from Shrikant Kothari. Ask reports about India procuring striker APCs from US. Uh, why do this when our local industry has made APCs based on army's specs? Another Faucian bargain to have US on our side versus China or something else. Yeah, there are some conflicting reports on this particular issue. I look at it from two perspectives. I mean, I'm looking at it from one. You already given that okay, there may be some kind of a cooperation enhancement between US and India, but more importantly, you must see that our equipment is of Russian origin, and we have been trying to do a little bit of diversification in our equipment. Initially our dependency on Russia was around almost 70%. That has now come down to about 45%. In fact, the current dependency on Russian equipment is 46%, 29% is France, and 11% is the US. So there is an effort being made to do some kind of a diversification, because you see what is going to happen in the future, we are not aware of. We are not very sure of. If China Russia relationship suddenly starts growing up and we are not able to make the wedge, as Mr. Bipindra was saying, then we may have to have alternative options. So maybe it might come handy. And look, anything which you procure or take, it also gives you an opportunity to develop something new and better, right? The BMPs, you found them, in the desert storm, etc., going up in flames. So there are some advantages, some disadvantages. BMPs rely on speed, whereas the others, the Western equipment rely on uh, armor protection. I mean, they want lives to be protected, because life is precious as far as they are concerned. In the Eastern Bloc, we have got too many people to spare, so that. So this is a philosophy of construction of equipment. You can't say that this is bad or that is good. It's just the way you have to look at these things. So look at the positives out of it, and I think that would be a much better way to see this issue of striker. If you want to add anything, you can add it.
Sir, of course, Indian companies have already made some similar equipment, but the fact is, this comes under co-production, co-development, project. So it's
Hmm.
not yet completely finalized. They are only exploring. So if I mentioned about this DTTI
Hmm.
thing, so there were about a dozen projects that were suggested in the last 10, 12 years, but
Hmm.
none of them actually progressed beyond a point, because obviously the requirements of India were not met by those
Correct.
projects. So
Correct.
similarly, Striker also, it's just at the initial discussion stage. They are
I
progressing the talks, and we don't know
Correct.
how it will pan out ultimately. So let's wait for it. It's just a very
Correct.
too. We are not buying it as of now. We are not procuring it, because this question Kotari says procuring. We are not procuring it as of now. We are looking at it as a joint project.
Okay, I think the we will call it an end. There are a lot of questions, but if I keep going, we'll take another half an hour to
Probably we'll take one more question and end it, because
Okay,
let's give
okay.
justice
If
to
you
the
want
people who
me,
came and asked us.
okay. If you want me, I can take this question of
Yeah.
SN. Uh, in 2+2 meeting, Defense Minister and Second State of US, Secretary of State of US are the representatives of military industrial complex and deep state, respectively. Can we say Bharat has managed to bring both to the table? Yeah, this is your field question.
So, see, this is not a new thing that is happening. So, we have been engaging with the 2+2 for a while now. This is the fifth iteration of the 2+2 mechanism. So, this mechanism is essentially for a comprehensive review, of the entire gamut of bilateral relationship that we have. And
And
as I
suggest.
mentioned earlier, answering one of the questions from the general, defense is the most defining and the most profound uh, aspect, reflective of this growing bilateral relationship between India and US. So this
Correct.
mechanism is essentially to review the most critical bilateral ties, issues that emerge from these bilateral ties. So it is essentially for that purpose. And uh, deep state, yeah, I mean, uh, uh, can we call it as bringing them together? I'm not sure, because this is the mechanism itself involves bringing together the foreign secretary, sorry, the Minister of External Affairs India, and the Secretary of State, which is his counterpart, who is his counterpart, and the Defense Minister and the Defense Secretary of the US, who are counterparts together. And this mechanism we have with several other nations. It's not just with the US.
The only thing which I want to add here is why he has asked this question is that it's understood commonly that the Secretary of State, or the State Department of the US is primarily one of the drivers of the deep states, because the pro anti-India lobby is a little lesser in US as compared to the pro US lobby, and a lot of this. And that's why you find that Blinken has been little soft on China. He has been trying to generate some kind of a
Yeah.
relationship with China. So there, whereas on the Defense Department side, they are very keen to have a very good relations with India.
No,
So
sir,
so
I
so.
think, yeah, I agree with you. But the thing is, there is something which we need to, highlight. The
Hmm.
fact is, there is always a balancing that happens in the bilateral ties, whether with China or with India,
Yeah.
or India's bilateral relationship with anybody. We do always balance it out because we don't want to, as I mentioned earlier, put all our eggs in one basket completely and then get caught as we did in the 1960s and 70s with regard to some nations. So that is essentially the reason why you see that when one of them is aggressively talking against China or India, the other person is balancing it out. So this
Yeah.
happens in bilateral diplomacy is based on balance. So I
Yeah.
believe that is where the
Yeah,
issue lies.
diplomacy is based on balance, and military is based on a win.
Yeah,
There is no requirement of balance. You play to win, and you don't mince your words when you are into the defense. So I think both have a different orientation. It's good that they two meet each other and try to resolve the national security issues. Thank you very much, Mr. Bipindra. It was wonderful speaking to you on this issue, and thank you, audience, for being with us, asking so many questions. I'm sorry we have not been able to take all the questions, but definitely your questions are relevant to us. It gives us new ideas for the new programs. And with that, please again watch, like, subscribe, and our QR code is there on the screen. You can help us, support us by your direct contributions as well. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Jai Hind. And thank you for this wonderful opportunity and very discerning audience. Good questions. I really love this conversation. And the QR code
Thank,
is there.
thank you. Yeah, correct.